you're in that category. So you published these papers showing what was good news, essentially. This isn't as deadly as we thought. And you produced a counter-immune response from your colleagues. And so what did that consist of?
I mean, I got accused of not knowing how to divide, essentially not knowing how to divide, doing the math wrong, or that there was still a possibility that every single positive result we found on these antibody tests were all false positives. And then I started getting hit pieces against me, against my wife, against like, my colleagues. I mean, it was very stressful. And Stanford reacted to those hit pieces in the press by giving them credence even when they knew for a fact they were false. So, for instance, there was an allegation that the head of an airline company had given $5,000 to me, and somehow I changed the result of the study. But it was ridiculous. The $5,000 went to Stanford in a gift account we used to offset study expenses. We ran this study in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We organized it and ran it. It was, it was really quite a feat.
Right.
And we ran it for very inexpensively. I would never alter the result of a study based on what funders say. It's ridiculous.
Well, what benefit would that be to you anyways? Like, if you're going to accuse someone of a crime, you should at least have a motive in mind. And if $5,000 is a pretty cheap price for your soul, by the way, Jay, and then like, what's in it for you exactly? What was the accusation? You were falsifying the data for what reason?
Yeah, so Stanford, rather than just dismissing the allegations out of hand, they conducted, well, first they started to call it an investigation, but then they realized they couldn't call it an investigation because it was so ridiculous. They called it a fact-finding mission.
Oh, one of those. Yeah.
And then, I spent that summer just incredibly stressed.
Yeah, I bet.
Like I'd never felt anxiety before. I mean, I'd never written an op-ed before. I just was a scientist, Jordan. I published papers for a living in peer-reviewed journals. I was really happy with that life.
Yeah. Hey, but join the club, man.
Yeah, I know. I thought about you a lot, actually, in those days, Jordan. I had to make a decision. After Stanford cleared me, they'd sent this very strong signal. If I just went back to that old life, just quietly doing science, they would let me go. They would continue to be a good, good faculty member faculty member in good standing.
Right. So, despite the fact that you were innocent, you should shut the hell up and go back to invisibility, and then we'll let you. So, what did the powers that be decide? That as long as you were compliant and quiet, like a good faculty member should be, then all the sins you didn't commit would be forgiven.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, how lovely of them. That's so impressive.
And it was so stressful, Jordan. Like I said, I thought about you a lot in those days because I know what you went through. But I generally am very good at dealing with anxiety.
Yeah.
Never in my life have felt anxiety. I felt it in a deep way. I lost 30 pounds of weight.
Yeah.
At one point, I was losing weight so quickly I thought I was actually afraid for my life. I couldn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just obsessively worked trying to address the damage. And then at some point in like summer of 2020, I decided that, what is my career for? It's not, if it's just to have another CV line or a stamp, it's just, I've wasted my life.
Yeah.
And I would speak no matter what the consequences. And actually then the anxiety went away. Like at that point, that decision I think was the right one.
People have two big classes of fear, and they're archetypal. And one is fear of nature and the other is fear of culture. Those are good ways of thinking about it. And you're afraid of nature because you could die. You could go insane. You could lose your mind. You could die. You could die while you're suffering. That's worth being afraid of. Second category, you'll get mobbed, excluded, and alienated, and then you'll die. And so and I've watched this with like 200 people now who've been mobbed and betrayed by the powers that be, let's say. And every single one of them, with tiny exceptions, responds exactly the way you did, which is, it's as if something traumatic in an unprecedented manner has occurred. And I've seen colleagues of mine who were, well, you said, for example, yourself, you weren't particularly prone to anxiety, fairly emotionally stable person. I've seen colleagues of mine who were the most solid people you could possibly imagine, like literally hounded into the asylum by the forces of the mob. It's appalling. This demonizing cancel culture driven by narcissistic psychopaths. It's like it could be the death of us all. It's really bad. And so your response is absolutely typical. It's interesting though, when you make that decision to flip what would you say? To flip to invert the reality, to go on the offensive rather than to be defensive and guilty, then, well, that, especially if you are basing that on a genuine apprehension of your own innocence, that does change the playing landscape substantially. And so that happened to you when, that was in the summer of 2020?
Yeah, sometime in summer, I talked to a friend of mine who's I've written with many times. I told him explicitly, I'm crossing the Rubicon. I don't care about my reputation anymore. My whatever academic reputation. I'm going to use what knowledge and sort of resources I have to say what I believe.
Yeah.
Because I think that there are many lives at stake in the mistaken policies we've adopted, and I have had the background and the life story where I could actually try to make some difference on that.
Right.
And after that, it was just transformative. I mean, I also am religious, and praying actually helped a lot. But that's
what were you praying
it's
for?
The summer of 2020.
What were you praying for? Just out of curiosity at that.
Just for clarity, for what relief from the anxiety, and then clarity for what I should do with my life.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's worth knowing, and obviously you discovered this, is that there is nothing that will save you in a complex situation except the truth. Now, it might not save you as well, but there is nothing else that you have. And so when you're backed into a corner, well, first of all, you better scour your soul. But second, what you've got to defend you, if you have anything, is definitely words of truth, the words that you believe to be the case. And it's useful to notice that can be on your side.
And you have to, I don't know, the other thing I realized is if I'm living my life just for myself, it's hollow. The purpose of my work before, I mean, if you look back on my work, what I wrote when I applied for tenure was that I studied vulnerable populations, the health and well-being of vulnerable populations, and how government policies and economic realities affect the health and well-being. I mean, and if that's true, that means that what I studied was for other people.
Yeah.
That my actions and my was not inwardly focused, but focused on the people that I studied.
Right. Well, so that means the crisis also forced you to